Welcome to the Overanalyzers, a weekly podcast where we talk about how to learn, improve, and achieve our ambitious goals. I'm Dan, I'm building an art empire, and Mike is fixing software. Today is May 24th, and last week we talked about a few different things. I had recently been accepted to an oddities market. This will be my first market ever with my personal art exhibiting in a show, and I was kind of freaking out about it because it's 3 months away. And I had just found out that I was accepted. I learned this week that it's actually only a month away. So uh, maybe we talk about that a little bit. But Mike was struggling with what seems to kind of be a reoccurring theme this year for him. Struggling with some burnout and stressing about stuff and unable to get back into his workflow. So I gave him a few things to try. And when I talked to you, Mike, on Wednesday, very briefly, you seem to be kind of excited about
Mhm.
these things. And I'm very curious to hear about your experience with them. So let's start with that. How was your week?
Okay, cool. I would not say that this was a recurring theme. It hasn't really been cyclical. It's been a big sort of disaster thing that has just taken a long time to move out of. So,
It's like a single chunk
yeah, a
of,
big
right? Okay.
explosion of me. And I think I'm realizing that it was a bigger deal than I thought at the time. At the time, I'm just thinking, I worked too hard. I'm tired now. I feel cranky. I just gotta take a little break. And I'm realizing that there was a lot more than that. And that's something I'm just slowly untangling over time. I got to the point where I felt stable. I was relaxed. I tried to relieve a lot of the pressure. But as of last week, I was trying to essentially put back together the good version of me. I felt more relaxed and no pressure, but I also wasn't really doing anything. So that's what we were talking through. I took your advice pretty much to the letter, and I made sure to every morning write down
Can you, what was my advice exactly? Remind me, because
mostly two things that I really worked on. One was simply writing down what is important to do. What are the most important things to do that day, just in my notebook as I sat down in the morning. That's all. I didn't really think about that any more than just making sure I thought about what needed to be done and putting down the most important things. The other was to try and one piece at a time add something good into my routine, into the day, and then take out something bad. And it's funny, at first, as soon as I did this, the first thing I did, I think, was to remove Discord from my phone. So I at least need to have enough intention to go to my computer and engage with people rather than just opening it mindlessly all the time. I did that. And my first instinct was, oh, great. This was such a good thing. I should completely overhaul every single thing right now. I should set an alarm for 6 in the morning. I should plan to run for 10 miles. I should do all of it immediately before I'd even had to suffer from deleting Discord. Just the little satisfaction of deleting it. And I'm thinking, I'm on a roll. And I resisted that temptation because I had tried to do that before and it didn't really work out. So I tried to stick with the plan of just let's just do one thing, sit with that. We can add another thing tomorrow. And it's funny because even that same day, hours later, I'm starting to feel the suffering of not having this little habit that I can satisfy of, oh, I'm going to whip out my phone for a second and scroll through some random server and check out the little memes channel or whatever. I had to think, do I want to use it? Do I need to go to my computer, see if anyone has messaged me? No? Okay. And that little bit of suffering was this nice reminder of, hey, I'm not in a good spot. There's a reason why everything is out of order. There's going to be some pain. Let's just go through it one piece at a time. And so I did. And I feel really good. Not just satisfied that I made these changes, but I feel focused and I feel like I'm able to I'm able to work better. Side note, I spent 2 hours. I'm not going to say screaming because I'm not a jerk, but being very upset on support with Sony trying to get my headphones repaired, and they were not helpful. So this keeps falling out because of their horrible, horrible quality control, and I can't do anything about it. They offered to let me buy another pair. Very generous of them. Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, uh, does removing Discord count as adding a good thing or removing a bad thing? I'm guessing it counts as
I
removing
consider
a
that
bad thing.
removing a bad thing. I did notice that some things felt a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah.
You know, removing something from the phone meant I'm using my phone less. So instead I had to read. Like, there's kind of a direct replacement where if I'm not using my phone, I'm not going to stare at the wall. I'm going to do something else. So if I'm reading, I would consider that a good thing. So they end up being paired. But
So
that was the
did
whole
you?
idea anyway. So.
Well, I'm just curious because I gave this advice, but actually implementing it in like a, in a realistic way, it's not always clear,
Yeah.
those actions of removing something. So I was just curious, did you intentionally do like a second action where you added something else good in there? Or was that did that count for the days?
I tried to pair it together. It was somewhat ambiguous sometimes, but I tried to add something and then remove something. A quick sampling. A good thing I added was waking up with an alarm in the morning. I didn't even decide on a particular time, just I can't lay in bed until I feel like getting up. I have to wake up with an alarm, whatever I want to set that to. So I consider that a good thing. I not tried. I made a point of getting hydrated, which I know it's sort of a meme, but at least for me, the difference between being well hydrated and not is very, very tangible. And there was a morning where I went to work, I sat down, coffee shop I really like, all set up, sipping coffee, eating a nice sandwich, thinking this is going to be so nice. And I couldn't focus. I felt so anxious. Everything was irritating and hard to focus on. And I just stopped and had 3 large cold glasses of water, and you could see my heart rate just plummet 15, 20 points. I mean, it was observable on the watch, and I felt so much better. Anyway, that was a good thing that I added. Sorry. But I think people sleep on that. So yeah, I
Well,
tried to just pair things together.
okay, good. And how are you now?
Pretty good. Very good. Very good. I feel there's something about having fallen apart a little bit and then pieced it all back together slowly where I get to reflect a little and recognize some of the patterns that had become the water and I didn't realize. One thing that I've noticed, this has been a very powerful thing for me to have recognized, is this constant feeling of doing the wrong thing or not going fast enough or not doing it good enough, whatever, just the not enough feeling relentlessly. And it was one, unpleasant. It adds a lot of stress and frustration and fatigue just for doing anything. So that burns me out. But also, it made me realize that a lot of what I'm working on is legitimately challenging. It's stuff that hasn't really been done before, at least not exactly the way I'm doing it. So I'm having to invent algorithms. I'm having to think about the nature of information and protocols and networks and things in a very fundamental and challenging way. And that feeling of always needing to go fast and try and get this done and it better be good and it better be whatever prevented me from being able to recognize whenever something wasn't quite right in my head or my understanding wasn't really there. I'd think, yeah, I get how UDP works. I get how an unreliable network works. But I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand the implications and the fundamental principles there. And because I wasn't slowing down and thinking, I got to learn more about this, I got to understand how Merkle trees exchanged between arbitrary numbers of devices and things like that. Because I wasn't doing that, the fundamentals weren't developing well enough, and I kept making mistakes and losing time and getting very frustrated because I would try something, think it would work, but not have fully thought it through, and then realize I would just make a mess. It was just getting really messy. So being able to take the time off, say, okay, I'm not doing anything for a while, and then I come back to it slowly. I was able to recognize all of those failings and try and one, just prioritize understanding things more deeply, but also recognize that feeling of rushing all the time. Like, that's probably the simplest way to put it. That was a big revelation for me, is just realizing I had applied pressure that was causing me to be less productive, not more.
Okay, something related. This week, and I have the oddities market coming up.
Yeah.
I have all of these tasks that I have to complete. I had to drop off my paintings to get them professionally photographed. I had to write this, kind of like I write this article for this thing. I'll talk more about that at another time. But I had a lot of writing to do this week, and it had to get done. And I had to call the comic place to see how the printing's going. I ran to this other local printer to see what they could do. I mean, I'm running around town. I got a new passport because I needed to do that.
Nice.
And then
Where is this oddities market?
Well, no. It's local.
Okay.
Getting a passport was on my list of things to do, and I just wanted to get it done.
Okay.
And I had already started the application. Really boring, but whatever. I wanted to get it done. So I'm just running around town, and I'm trying to do this while working full time. So like I'm cutting corners at work, and I'm running late to work, and then I'm
Yeah.
doing this stuff during my lunch period. I'm just running around and trying to get all this stuff figured out. It felt so productive to knock these things off the list. Check. I got this done. I spent one day this week on Wednesday. I spent 5 hours in calls with people, like just phone calls that I had scheduled with people, and I really wanted to talk to whoever, and it was great. But oh my God, like I have just, I mean, I've paid attention to like every minute this week, and it drove me insane. In the last few days, been the first time I've just kind of been able to breathe, and I've really just prioritized sleeping because I was just so run dry. Anyway, running around and doing all of this stuff seems, and it is, it seems and feels so productive because they are specific items I can check off a list, and it puts me in this totally different place. I dropped off my paintings. Now I can get prints made. I talked to the comic place. Now I can get this book. Whatever.
Yeah.
They're very achievable goals. Well, the hard stuff, none of the really hard stuff, like
Right.
all the art and the world building and the story writing, all the stuff, the meat of my life, the purpose of me doing all of this stuff, none of it has been touched.
Yeah.
And I did that intentionally because I have to focus on these urgent things right now, but the hard stuff hasn't really been touched. And even when I do work on the hard stuff, it doesn't ever really feel quite as clearly productive as all the admin stuff I've been doing this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me this week because I was feeling like I've been more productive this week than ever before, right? Like just running around, hitting stuff, knocking it off. But I look at it, and maybe this is my brain's way of just making sure I never am ever satisfied or happy. But it's like this stuff doesn't count as much as the really hard stuff. And the really hard stuff is really hard to schedule properly and to really understand because there's such complex, never-ending problems. Like me developing art. There's no end to that. There's no point where I get to where I say I'm done, right? You just make art forever. You just improve forever. You just think about stories forever. It's not achievable. I mean, there's checkpoints along the way, but the stuff you're talking about, it's like it's so hard to put it into a framework on a day-to-day basis. You can time block it or you can deadline it. You can tie it to certain accomplishments or whatever, but I always have this vision of me, sitting down and going crazy and writing all these stories and drawing all these pictures, and it's just flowing out of me, like
Mhm.
a wonderful montage in a early 2000s movie, right, where everything's just flowing together.
Mhm.
But it just never happens that way. And I don't know. I don't really have a point to this other than just to say that I agree that like really complex, hard stuff to think about, like the really hard stuff,
Yeah.
it's difficult to track, which is why timesheets don't work for creative endeavors. But it's difficult to gauge on whether or not you're doing the right thing. And so you do constantly question
Mhm.
yourself, am I moving fast enough? Because a lot of times the most productive thing you can do is to not move fast. I don't know. I've probably rambled too long, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you said you don't know what your point is. I think there's a huge point in here.
Oh, good.
I don't want to get too into this whole vein, but I have a lot of intense criticism for the business world right now at this moment in time in 2026, the year of our Lord. And when you are experiencing it yourself, that feeling of incredible busyness and these huge to-do lists, and you're checking stuff off and thinking, I got my passport. I don't know why you need a passport, but you got it. Great. It's checked. Checks are very satisfying. One thing to observe is, let's say, middle management type people. You can probably think of some who are just so busy all the time. They will tell you, I had 47 meetings today and I had to answer 50 emails in 30 seconds, and I'm they're just consumed by busyness and they're doing so many things. But you poke at them a little bit, or trying to ask them, well, what did you do? What was the accomplishment of these meetings? Collected status reports. We facilitated information exchange between different members, different stakeholders, and it's a bunch of nothing. If you really reflect on what actually happened, a lot of it is just nothing. That's that's where we're at. No one's making anything that is of any interest to any actual human. Big problem, but you can see it in other people. You recognize it when you see it, but those people don't recognize it, or they don't want to, or whatever. But it's hard to see in yourself. What I'm saying is, what feels productive. We've talked about this in other contexts too. The judgment of learning thing. Do you remember talking about this? I can't remember what book we were
Remind me.
reading. It's just a simple observation that you have a very hard time judging when you are learning something. There's not some innate feeling that bubbles up inside of you when you have in fact learned something. You just have to kind of guess if you're learning or not. It's the same phenomenon here, I think. You have to just kind of guess. There's nothing that truly represents real progress forward, that yes, you have in fact solved the hard problem or made progress on the hard problem. It's very easy to feel productive when you maybe aren't necessarily. That's not to say all those little tasks aren't important. Sometimes they do have to get done, and sometimes emails do need to be sent, and so on. But this is just what I've been wrestling with. As I said, I've recognized how I haven't really been developing a deeper understanding of the things that I need to develop a deeper understanding of. I was getting a lot of stuff done, checking a lot of things off the list, but looking back, that was nowhere near as important as understanding the problem and being able to reason out from there. And it was distracting me from that. It was preventing me from doing that. So I think it's just something you have to slow down a little bit on and reflect and try and get that big picture in your head again, you know?
Well, One of the things that has been helping me, but make sure I'm thinking about the right things, is to write down those two or three most
Hmm.
important things for the day, because you can kind of accurately judge what the priorities are,
Yeah.
right? In the moment, it's easy to chase the things that make you feel really productive, and sometimes you have to,
Hmm.
whatever. We're being pretty vague,
Yeah.
but when you sit and think about what the true priorities are,
Hmm.
you can put them on a list. And so that's definitely been helping me.
Yeah.
And it seems versatile enough to just kind of fit into every day. It's not like spend 1 hour every single day doing this thing.
Hmm.
It's, what are generally the two or three most important things you need to do today? And I don't know, that's been helping me.
I, as I said, I did that exactly, and I found it fantastic. If nothing else, just to force yourself to take those moments at the beginning of every day before I start to get fixated on whatever presents itself and think, what does actually matter? So amazing. Very good suggestion. I extended it a bit further in for the two or three things. If I went to go work on one of them, I would be deliberate and try and think about that thing, that problem. Try and make sure I had a clear picture of what I'm doing, some kind of mental model for it. And then I would write out a half dozen different pieces of information or concepts or something that I needed to be thinking about. It could be to do items, it could be a little bit higher level than that. And make sure that was laid out and in front of me before I really started to work, because we've made this observation many times how you seem to be either having a very broad perspective, you can see the big picture, or you're tunnel visioned. And I think that tunnel visioning on something is important. It's inherent to the work. That's what happens when you stare at a problem for a while. You start to get really drilled into something. It's how focus works in a sense. And that's good. That's okay. That's how you solve problems like that. But the downside is losing that bigger picture sense. So what I kept trying to do is put figure out the big picture and then put it on paper, have it in front of me, and then allow myself to go get focused down on something. And instead of getting focused and then sort of getting sidetracked and hyper focusing on something else and jumping around and realizing a couple hours later that now I'm off God knows where doing God knows what, I have that picture in front of me and I could think, no, 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 just go to item number 2. I don't need to do any of this stuff. I don't need to rethink the big picture. I just have it there. So just follow the plan that I laid out for myself at the beginning of the day when I was thinking in big picture mode. And that's been really helpful for me.
Another thing that's been really helpful for me is that thing you told me last week, which was when I'm stressing about stuff, it's, well, one of the things you told me was that stress basically is caused by unknowns. So, if you know what the work is, it's more of a matter of doing it. But if you're stressed, like really stressing about it, it's probably that you just don't know what to do and it's the indecision. That was helpful. But the second thing you told me was to think in percentages, not in terms of, success or failure, in terms of like, if it was related to my book. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still waiting on getting that. Like there's still production issues around that. So now I'm looking at all of these interactions with the comic place as being, there's an 80% chance that this is not going to be the solution that they're sending me.
Yeah.
Or when I was running into the it's not the DMV, but it's like a service center, very much
Mm-hmm.
similar to a DMV. Just picture
Yeah.
a horrible DMV, and that's where I went to do the passport stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going in there, and there's like three other things I need to take care of before I have to get to work. And I'm walking in, I'm walking up the steps, and I'm thinking, okay, what's the percentage that this works out? And I was like, I think I got all my papers. I think I'm good. I'm gonna put it at 75. And I go in, and it almost works. Almost everything's good, but I have to get a money order. at the last second,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you need a money order and you got to fill out this last little part of the paperwork. I'm like, okay. And instead of getting really upset that it didn't work, it was like, oh, okay. I think that was a pretty good percentage to give it. It was almost successful, but there
Hmm.
was one last thing. So then I'm running over to get the money order. As I'm walking into the money order thing, I'm thinking, okay, I have done this before, but I know these things are kind of complicated. I'm going to get it an 85%. And I go to the counter and I do it, and I hand him, I don't know, a credit card or whatever. He's like, no, 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 it's got to be cash only. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I go to the ATM. I was like, I'm almost there, but it was only 85%. So I go to the ATM, get the money, then give it to him, and then I'm back. And so I was doing these little percentages
Hmm.
on everything, on the success rate of them, and it became more of this game of, am I going to be right? Or am I going to be wrong,
Hmm.
rather than is it going to be successful or is it going to ruin my day?
Right.
And it made everything, I'm not going to say going to a DMV or getting a cash order was fun,
Yeah.
but it made everything interesting, and it made me agile. Like I could move. I could just
Hmm.
immediately pivot from one thing to the next, which is not something, if you know me, I'm very good at doing. I get,
Yeah.
anything can ruin my day if it doesn't go right. So that was just, I don't know. I've continued doing that throughout the week, and it's just been like this totally different point of view to take on things.
That's super
So that was a
cool.
cool thing.
It also, I gave you that advice, and I do think it's a great way to think, but I don't know that I've really been exercising that way of thinking very much lately. So hearing you talk about it makes me think I should make sure that I'm following my own advice. But it is
I mean,
also, go ahead.
well, I mean, this is kind of the first time of me trying this out. So of course it's going to be more exciting and more
Yeah.
novel, but I and it's not like you need to do that for everything. Like what's the percentage of whatever. But there's definitely certain things that it applies to, and I don't know.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's not like you have to do that with every single choice or every single interaction, but
I I find it interesting because this isn't quite the same, but it's close. We've noticed that oftentimes when you set some goal for yourself, something you want to do, and then you go to do it and you fail, you almost always blame the doing it version of yourself. You decided to do 100 push-ups every day and you failed. 2 weeks in, you missed it and you think, "I'm a failure. I didn't do my push-ups. I suck. I'm never going to be fit." But you should blame the person who did the planning because that was the stupid person. That's a ridiculous challenge. It's not even that helpful. So feel stupid for setting the goal of doing 100 push-ups a day. Set better goals. Don't feel so
no, I
bad
I
for
mean,
missing it.
think maybe both could be blamed, you
Well,
know.
fine,
It's
sure,
not
but
it's not
but the planner never gets blamed. It's rare that people blame their New Year's resolutions. They blame the person trying to do this endlessly. And point is, the percentage thinking changes the dynamic a bit, where rather than living in that moment of, oh my gosh, I couldn't get the money order, this sucks so much, I hate it, I'm a failure, I'm not going to land this product on time or whatever, you're able to think, I probably gave this too high of a percentage, let me readjust my planning, my thinking, that side of the equation, and you lean a little less on the doer in the moment version of yourself.
it was about 5 years ago, and this is, I think, one of the most useful things you ever told me. About 5 years ago, I'm doing all of this. I had all of these art goals and art plans. I was going to learn all this stuff and do all these exercises, go through all these books. I planned all this stuff out, and then I was complaining to you about how I was missing the mark, or I don't know, falling short on all this stuff, and I was getting overwhelmed and feeling all depressed about it. And you said something like, "Yeah, you don't suck at art. You just really suck at planning. You suck at planning." And it, hurt my feelings at the time, but it was so dead on. I was being completely unrealistic with the schedule I was giving myself, the goals I was setting. None of it was actually doable. And so I kept giving myself these plans and then failing miserably and blaming myself for failing
Yeah.
at the doing part of it. And I should have been thinking about the plan making version of me. So yeah, I agree with
And
that.
I think
It's
that
nice to see you haven't changed your perspective on
yeah,
it.
I think I was right. And so do you. So that's two of us that think I was right about that. I think the same thing applies here. That's I guess what we're trying to tie together is the business side of you trying to accomplish this thing. It feels a little different because it is an external goal and there's something else going on and a lot of it is out of your control, but it's fundamentally the same thing. You have the planning version, you have the execution version, and it doesn't matter that you aren't the person who's doing all of the execution. You are the person doing all the planning. You have to be realistic about what can get done, especially now. I mean, you were freaking out last week and you thought you had 3 months. Now you only have 1 month. So you you're gonna get done what you can get done in a month, and you're gonna try and do the best work that you can, but you can't you can't lose it over somebody else missing a deadline or not giving you your passport or who knows, because
Yeah.
you just can't.
Well, okay, when it comes to the market that I'm doing, I I just realized that who cares? Like it's just who cares? It's a little market and it's awesome. I get to do my first
Yeah.
market. It's in a month. I get to use that as a way to rush through and get some inventory and it'll be fun. And it's not going to be the most spectacular thing ever,
Yeah.
whatever. That's so I don't know. I don't know.
I th
Once I realized that it was 2 months before I
yeah,
thought, it's like, oh, okay, I give up. This is just going to be
right,
fun and nothing else.
right.
Yeah.
There is something a little bit comical about that. And I do think strategically turning up the apathy can be helpful sometimes, that the sun's gonna consume the earth eventually. What does it all matter? Just if that helps throttle it down, just that's
Yeah.
fine, you know?
Yeah. It's really not that significant.
Yeah.
All right. Is that about it?
Yeah, I think I'm on an upward trajectory, so I'm very happy about that. You have embraced the chaos of only a month to go. Cool.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I feel like there's this huge wave of stuff I needed to complete, and it's pretty much
Yeah,
handled. It's calmed down a
good.
little bit. It's gonna ramp up again in this next week, but I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine.
Cool. All right, quick little recap. Jump in here if I miss anything. Think in percentages. That seems to be useful. Lay out the plan when you're in big picture mode so that when you're in hyper focus mode, you have something to refer to without having to get your brain back into big picture mode. That's something I found helpful. The adding one good thing, subtracting one bad thing every day was very, very helpful for me. So if anybody feels like they're in a similar spot, highly recommend. You discussed how art is not a to-do item. It's not really a thing that can just be ticked off and achieved. It's much bigger, it's much different, it's endless. It has to be experienced and thought of in a bit of a different way. Think I'm feeling something similar on the engineering side, so that's worth appreciating. Don't be a busybody checking things off, right?
Yeah. That I feel like that's a much bigger conversation because
Sure,
that's a bit of a simplification, and we didn't really get into it, but
sure.
yes. Yeah.
We can have that conversation if we want to. Anyway,
Right. Another time.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's kind of where we landed today. I don't think we have any challenges for the week, so we'll leave that. But again, send any ideas. I actually haven't checked the comments this week, so if you did already, sorry, we will check that out and see if we can get something together soon here. Otherwise, let us know how you all are feeling. You can leave us comments here on YouTube, on our podcast platforms, and you are always welcome to join the Discord and hang out with us there.